All right, hey gang. I just quickly wanted to say a few words about the paper that's coming due, the second critical reaction paper on Vico and Descartes. Just sort of explain a little bit more what's going on here. So in terms of the Renaissance, early modern period, the works of Descartes and Vico are nicely kind of representative of these big contrasting worldviews, right? And you can line them up with the models that we've been talking about. So obviously, Descartes falls into that Platonic tradition. He's not interested in that kind of big, weird metaphysical stuff that Plato's interested in, but he's interested in this business of certainty, absolute certainty, and that's like his main goal, right? And so for Descartes, language, rhetoric, these are things that get in the way of certainty. Passions, right? Irrationalities. Rhetoric deals with people's, subjective preferences, biases, and so the whole process is kind of fraught. He wants to kind of set all that aside and think to himself, all right, how can we achieve perfect absolute certainty? And I want to get rid of anything that gets in the way, and I just want to focus on certainty, right? So for him, it's all about the mind. It's all about kind of mathematical and geometric operations and thinking about things in the abstract and coming up with these sort of ironclad truths that you can then go around and apply to the world, right? Vico, meanwhile, is almost like directly responding to Descartes in his work, and his approach is very different, right? So he's saying, look, the moderns, us, we're like doing lots of really cool things in terms of our new devices and technologies and discoveries, and we're learning a lot. But the ancients, going back to Isocrates and Cicero and so on, even the sophists, the ancients had a really strong handle on the human in its entire kind of being, right? So what we need to do is we need to not lose sight of the importance of the imagination. We need to not lose sight of the importance of common sense. And he has this really interesting way of thinking about, rhetorical training and education. He's basically saying, like, when we're younger is when our brains are more supple and imaginative. And so there is where we should be actually encouraging younger folks to, like, exercise their imagination and use it and work with it. And then later on, we can figure out these kind of more sort of rational dialectical propositions, like the true and the... Oh, shoot. Okay, sorry. Screen moved. So we have these kind of major schools of thought, best represented by Descartes, although Ramus falls there as well. And then we've got Vico, Erasmus goes with Vico as well, but Descartes and Vico are the kind of two main ones. The idea here is for you to defend kind of a position. And the way we're doing this is through this is-ought distinction, which is this kind of philosophical, this old kind of distinction that is important to remember. Because a lot of times when we're talking, we talk about things that actually are as though they are things that should be otherwise, right? Or sometimes we're talking about things that should be otherwise, forgetting how things actually are. So the is-ought distinction is, all right, this is the way things actually are. If you look around and you look at the world we inhabit and da-da-da-da, this is the way things are. That's is. This is it. This is the way things are, right? So we might want... this is just a fictional example, or a hypothetical, but we might want monogamy, right? Like nuclear family. We might want people to stay loyal to each other and to not have affairs and to cheat. But it might be the case that that's not who we are. Right? Maybe we are, inclined to have multiple partners, and that's just written into us somehow, right? I'm not agreeing or disagreeing, it's just sort of like throwing it out there, right? The is-ought thing, like what we want versus what we've got. And that's how I want you to approach this, is on the one hand, which of our two authors, Descartes or Vico, best represents the way things actually are, and which of them best represents what you think things ought to look like. I know that's a big question, right? But in terms of worldviews, in terms of Descartes' worldview is the serious man worldview. It's the worldview of someone who wants order, who wants control, who wants certainty, who wants clarity, consistency, coherence, right? These are things that sound lovely and make good sense, and who wouldn't, right? Vico wants some of that, but he also wants the possibilities for, again, imagination and creativity and like the ability to think beyond just the kind of the quantitative and the rational and the logical, right? Now, maybe you think that we live in a world of Vico, of subjectivism, of poetics, of everyone just kind of like following their own imagined whatever, but what we want is Descartes. What we need is regimentation. We need order. We need control. We need clarity and certainty, right? It's up to you. Maybe you think the opposite. Maybe you think we have Descartes right now, right? With all of our technology and all of our databases and all of our knowledge and our ability to be certain about things. But what we need is more Vico. Or maybe what we have is Vico and that's what we need. You know what I mean? So you get to make some choices here. I'm mostly interested in how you're marshaling your warrants and your explanations and how it is you're making your case. So along the way, I'm asking for two representative anecdotes. Burke, this is a concept from Kenneth Burke. This idea of a representative anecdote is an anecdote that kind of is most typical of the category that you are working with, right? And so, if you're thinking about like, who is the representative anecdote basketball player? Michael Jordan? Probably. Who's the representative anecdote for golfers? Is it Jack Nicklaus? Is it Tiger Woods? It's the one kind of example that covers the most of the other examples. It's the best, most typical, most representative example. So I'm looking for one for the is, and I'm looking for one for the ought. So here is my is. The way things are is Descartes. My example is this movie. Maybe it's A Few Good Men. Or here's the is. I'm going with Vico, and my representative anecdote is Disneyland. Now, I'm moving into the ought. This is the way it ought to be. I'm going with Descartes, and my representative example is some film, or some industry, or some enterprise, or the military, or whatever, right? Think big, but also think concretely and specifically, if you can. I know that's a weird thing, but like Disneyland is a very big example. I mean, Disney movies are everywhere. There's a couple of major theme parks. It's part of culture. It's part of history, right? So it's big, but it's also specific and concrete. And you can point to something very sort of, visible. That's the hope here. That's the goal. So it's the is, ought, and it's Vico and Descartes. And it's one representative anecdote for the is and one representative anecdote for the ought. Sorry, tongue-tied this morning. And that's pretty much it. So, I don't really have a right or a wrong here. I'm just mostly interested in where you're at and how you're bringing your ideas together and how you're making your case. So, hopefully that's helpful. 8 minutes. That's a nice short video for you. And I look forward to reading what you come up with, gang. Take care.